I'm back. Did you miss me?
Welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone's doing well out there, and we've made it to Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and I watched every film in this box set. I have one more review to do next week, and that is for the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, so we'll get to that next week. But today we're going to talk about Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now, after the success of Freddy's Dead to Final Nightmare, even though it wasn't well received with fans nor critics, although again, New Line didn't really care what the critics thought, it was always what the fans thought. Well, this wasn't well received with the fans either. Rightfully so, it is a terrible film, and you could watch my review if you like and see how much I didn't like that film again after not seeing it for a long time. So they really did think they were done with the franchise for the time being, but the 10-year anniversary was fast approaching. Now, Bob Shaye and Wes Craven had some sore points over the years, back and forth, because Wes Craven never really got paid for any of the sequels or any of the merchandise. And Bob Shaye made amends. He paid Wes Craven some back pay from some of the sequels, some of the merchandising money. And he asked Wes Craven if he had any ideas to do a 10th anniversary film, since the 10th anniversary was fast approaching from the release of the original film. And Wes Craven went to work on a script because he was interested. They were going to let him do what he wanted to do and try to reinvent the franchise if they could do that, and do something a little different, a little special. So, like I said in my Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors review, Wes Craven had developed a script with his writing partner for that film. Well, he used some of those ideas in this script, and New Line gave Wes Craven $8 million. Now, this film was released October 14th of 1994, just under the 10-year mark. The original came out in November of 1984, this one came out in October, so it was just about 10 years when this movie came out. It's rated R, it's an hour and 52 minutes long, which is the longest movie of the franchise. And upon release, it had an $8 million budget and it made 19.7, unfortunately, even though I do think this is definitely one of the best of the whole franchise, for sure. And Wes Craven wrote and directed this film, and Robert Englund came back to play himself in this film and Freddy Krueger, a redesigned Freddy Krueger, which I really do like the redesign. If you're going to go in a little bit of a different direction, I like this redesign. It works, and I like the new glove. All that works for me here. Heather Langenkamp's back as herself, because everybody plays themselves. This has more reality-based, more meta. This is ahead of its time, this film, for sure. We'll get into that as we go along. Miko Hughes plays Heather Langenkamp's son, Dylan, and he is really good in this film. As a kid, sometimes child actors can be not very good. He actually is pretty good in this film. Wes Craven plays himself in this film. John Saxon comes back to play himself in this film. Bob Shaye's in this film, plays himself. Lynn Shaye's in this film. She plays a nurse, etc., etc. There's a bunch of people that worked at Uline and are in this film as themselves. And in this film, Heather Langenkamp has a husband who was a special makeup effects artist, which is funny because in real life, Heather Langenkamp's husband is a special effects artist in his own right. At the beginning of the film, Heather Langenkamp has this nightmare where her husband and his team of effects artists are working on this new glove for this new film, and they're on a film set, and all of a sudden the glove goes haywire and starts killing everybody, or these effects guys and her husband. And she wakes up, and there's an earthquake. This is right around the time where California had the Northridge earthquake. As a matter of fact, Wes Craven went around with a camera and filmed some of the damage from the earthquake that shows up in this film on the news footage. And just when Heather Langenkamp's driving around, that was actually real damage caused by that earthquake back then. And Heather isn't really doing too much in the movie industry. Like, this is based in, like, Wes Craven definitely based this in reality. And from the onset of the film, you can feel that she's bothered by something. She's having these strange nightmares. She hasn't done a Nightmare on Elm Street movie since part 3. It's even referenced in the film because she does an interview on live TV where Robert Englund comes out dressed as Freddy from the original film, because they're talking about how, you know, it's like going to be the 10th anniversary of the film, and she ever thought about going back and do it again, and this and that. And we see Robert Englund without his makeup on, and him and Heather Langenkamp are friendly. And it's nice to see these people playing themselves as characters in this film. I like this angle of it. It's definitely, it was, especially for at the time, this was a brand new take on this kind of material, where the people that made the films are starting to be haunted by this image of Freddy that's taken on a life of its own. And as the film goes on, we come to find out that Freddy is manifesting itself as a demon in real life. And even Wes Craven explains to Nancy when he's or to Heather Langenkamp, call her Nancy. But for a small point towards the end of the movie, she actually is Nancy, at least to John Saxon's character in his dream world. Wes Craven says to her, because they're all having nightmares. Robert Englund's having nightmares. Wes Craven's having nightmares. Bob Shaye's having nightmares. And Wes Craven explains to Heather Langenkamp's character is, while we were making the films and the series was going on, Freddy was contained. But once the films ended, Freddy took on a life of its own, and he's taking vengeance on us. What was keeping him at bay was making... It's very inspired by Grimm fairy tales, and even the ending, how it ends and how they dispatch of Freddy is right out of Hansel and Gretel. Although the ending doesn't completely work for me, but I still really like this film. It's definitely one of the best of the franchise. And as we go along, Dylan's having different problems with nightmares, and he can't sleep, and he's having visions, and Heather Langenkamp sees him watching her film, and right in the beginning of the film, her husband gets killed. He's working out in Palm Springs on this dish soap commercial, and she calls him and wants him to come home immediately because Dylan had a panic attack. And he's driving home, and the glove comes up from underneath the seat and just gouges his chest, and he gets in a bad car wreck. And this is when Heather Langenkamp's character, Heather Langenkamp, realizes that Freddy might be real, and he's coming after her. And Wes Craven, when she goes to see Wes Craven later on in the film, because Bob Shaye calls her in her office saying they want to make a new Nightmare on Elm Street film, and she would star in it. And she's like unsure. She's like, look, I'm a mother now. I don't know if I really want to do that. And he says about how Wes Craven's been working on this for a while. So she goes see Wes Craven, and he kind of explains to her, as they're having a conversation, it's the exact same conversation that's in his script that he typed out. And I really like that meta-ness of it. It really works for this film, although again, I think it was ahead of its time. That's why it didn't do as well. Plus, I think there was some bad blood from 5 and 6, kind of wore out the fans on this franchise. Basically, Wes says that she is the gatekeeper for Freddy to come back into the real world and go after everybody else. So basically, towards the end of the film, her and her son Dylan go into the dream world. She has to go in and save Dylan and dispatch of Freddy. The old Hansel and Gretel ending where Freddy gets shoved into this furnace and they light him on fire, and that is the end of A New Nightmare. And we see the script, Wes Craven's script, and at the end we see Heather Langenkamp reading it to her son Dylan, and that's how the film ends. This film really does, it took the franchise in a totally different direction, but kept it grounded more in reality, for sure, bringing all the actors and the people that worked on the film into the film as themselves. I like that angle a lot. Watched this last night, which is probably the first time I've seen it, probably about 5 years. It really works really well. It's an awesome film from Wes Craven, going back to the franchise that he created. And I like Freddy. I like the design of Freddy, to redesign. Freddy's not in this movie a whole lot. I mean, honestly, Freddy might have definitely under 10 minutes of screen time, and we don't even see Freddy for a long period of time. And it's quite a bit of time into the film until we actually see Freddy, and it's even a little bit longer after that until we actually see him in action. And I like that they hit him in the shadows, because his presence looms large over the whole film. He is the reason why everything is happening, and why the tension is getting ratcheted up as the film goes along. But even though he doesn't show up, you could feel his presence in this film as Wes Craven goes forward with the movie and the plot. And I mean, there's some side plot. Well, Dylan gets admitted to the hospital, and Heather Langenkamp's fighting with the one doctor because she thinks that Heather is abusive. And there's a couple really good character moments with Heather Langenkamp and John Sexton at a playground where Dylan's playing. And it's almost like they played father and daughter in this movie so long ago, but they have this father-daughter moment on this park bench, even though they're not really father and daughter. I thought it was a really sweet scene, and John Saxon's really sweet with Heather Langenkamp in the scene. And then obviously it's interrupted by Dylan on top of that spacecraft jungle gym where he falls off and they catch him. And even at the end, like when Heather figures out that she has to go into the dream world and defeat Freddy once and for all, or he's going to keep haunting her son, she calls John Saxon in the middle of the night, and he comes, but he comes and he's dressed as what he was dressed like in the first film, and he talks to her and calls her daughter. Why are you calling me John? I'm your father. It's a really cool scene, and I like it a lot. I like how Wes Craven shoots it. I like how it plays out. I really do. I like the kills when they do happen. There's not that many kills in this film. I think there's only 4 total in the whole film. Her husband gets killed. Their babysitter gets killed in a cool scene, a callback to the first film that I think is even a little creepier because there's a little kid involved. And there is blood for sure. I just think I love Freddy's redesign. I love the glove. I think it's a really smart script. Heather Langenkamp really acts her ass off in this film. All the actors do well, except for some of the people that aren't really actors. Wes Craven's just okay as himself. I know it sounds weird because he's playing himself, but you know, he's a director. He's not an actor. Bob Shea is okay because he runs a company. He's not an actor. Some of the other people that are real people that aren't really actors are just okay. But the actors themselves are really good. And there's the funeral scene for her husband. We see a lot of the actors from the earlier films, like Tuesday Night shows up. Some of the other actors from the first film and some of the other films show up for the funeral. I thought that was a nice little scene where they show. I know Wes Craven wanted Johnny Depp to come back, but he was too timid because by that point Johnny Depp was kind of a star. He was kind of timid to ask, and when he ran into Johnny Depp not too long after this was made, Johnny Depp said, "I would have happily done it." Wes Craven kind of kicked himself for not asking him about coming back to do this film. The ending is probably one of the parts where I think it's not awful like some of the other films, but I think it could have been better. I know what Wes Craven was going for, the Hansel and Gretel ending, but I just don't think it works totally. It's okay. It's not great. I think it's an okay ending. It's certainly much better than Freddy's Dead. It's much better than Part 5. It's much better than Part 4. I don't think it's better than Part 3's ending, though, How to Dispatch of Freddy. It's okay. And some of the effects, they tried to use some CGI, and it doesn't look good. It's dated. They didn't have a whole lot of money. They only had $8 million to pull this off. I mean, this was a big scope for this film, considering what Wes Craven was trying to pull off. So I could see where the budget was probably stretched as thin as possible. But yeah, some of the CGI effects look terrible, but it's from '94. I expect that for a movie of this budget and how early on in CGI effects this really was. This wasn't Terminator 2 or Jurassic Park. This was an $8 million Nightmare on Elm Street film. But overall, I like the seriousness of the film. I like the tension buildup. I like Freddy's redesign. I think there is some palpable tension during the film. There's some scary moments with Freddy and some of the things that are going on. I really like it. It's really well done, and I'm glad that Wes Craven got to come back and kind of cap off the franchise that he helped create in a new and creative way, especially after the franchise really lost steam, especially with the last 3 films. I mean, 4, I know I said I had a good enough time with, although that film has tons of problems. 5 is a dumpster fire, and 6 is god-awful. So this was a new and exciting way for them to bring back the franchise. Unfortunately, it wasn't a huge hit. I think by that point, people were kind of tired of Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy had been played out, even though Wes Craven redesigned him and made him scary again and intense again and not the jokey one-liner guy. But unfortunately, I think by this point, there was a lot of stink on this franchise, and I don't think the audience was really wanting another sequel, unfortunately. Robert Englund has said this is his favorite of the franchise. I think this is on par with the first one, and you'll see that reflected in my score. I would give this a 9 out of 10. I think this is an excellent sequel to the original film. This definitely, I love Part 3. I even think this is better than Part 3. I like the seriousness of it. I like the acting in it. I like the story. I like the meta-ness of it. I mean, this is a precursor to Scream. I mean, 2 years later, Wes Craven had Scream out, which is really meta. So this is almost like his warm-up to go on to that one. I think it's really well done here. I like where he goes with the story and how Freddy is a real demon and that was being held at bay by the movies. I like that, the story arc a lot. So yes, a 9 out of 10 for Wes Craven's New Nightmare. What are your thoughts on this movie? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, share this video. I greatly would appreciate that. I'll be back next week with a Nightmare on Elm Street remake review, and then I'm going to do a ranking review sometime next week. And then we'll be done with the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise for now. We're going to move on to some other things. Until then, I hope everyone's doing well out there, and I'll see you soon. Bye.